Morning, everybody. My name is Nathan Wu. I'm an analyst with the UCSB Hyperloop team, and recently we've been setting out to answer the question of comparing key performance indicators of the past, present, and future forms of transportation. Will the Hyperloop cover the main needs of consumers better than other similar modes of transportation? So you might be asking, why are we trying to answer this question? Well, when we first started, when I first met the team, we were trying to answer the question of the economic feasibility of the Hyperloop. But obviously that question is too broad to be answered by a small team with constrained time and resources. So we've taken the first step by identifying the features and the KPIs that go into the demand level. And then a lot of private companies and universities today are trying to figure out the engineering solutions and the financing solutions, but not many people are looking into the feasibility. So to break down this question, we're taking a comparative approach using information given to us by our partners at DGW Hyperloop and Michigan Hyperloop and Transpod, and we're also supplementing that with online information. So we're going to compare past, present, future forms of transportation, and we're going to look at the consumer side. So the key performance indicators that we are looking at, the KPIs, are price, travel time, comfort, and safety. That's the order that we believe that consumers value those KPIs. So price is basically like how much are people willing to pay to travel from point A to point B. Obviously, people want a lower price option. That's why sites like Expedia and Booking.com exist to find the best price. Travel time is the time to get from point A to point B. Originally, when we started this project, we were looking at speed, like how long would it take to get from the runway in Los Angeles to the runway in New York. But we realized that travel time is a lot more than that. There's the time that it takes to go through security, the time it takes to board the plane, the time it takes to get off the plane. So basically, travel time is the time from when you set foot into the station or airport until you get off. And then there we go. Safety is also very important because people don't want to be riding in a death trap. But safety, statistically, and perceived safety are also different because, like in an airplane, there's like more chance of you getting struck by lightning than being in an airplane accident. But also in a car, there's a much higher likelihood of you getting in an accident. But people perceive that being in a car is safer than being in an airplane. And then we're also going to look at comfort, which is basically just like the amenities and how the seats feel and how much legroom you're getting and stuff like that. So we're going to first examine the Hyperloop's KPIs. So the proposed price of the Hyperloop right now is $20 to travel 350 miles. So obviously that is a little low with the technologies and infrastructure that we have in place today. But there's three factors that we think will bring the price down for that to be viable. The first is improving technologies, and the second is competitors in the Hyperloop operator area. And the third is government subsidies, because the Hyperloop is obviously a greener, cleaner way to travel, and we believe that the government will help support this positive externality. And the travel time on the Hyperloop is 52 minutes to go 350 miles per hour. So obviously, 350 miles divided by 760 is not 52 minutes. 760 miles per hour is the proposed speed of the Hyperloop. But how we got that time right here is we added in 4 stops along the route from point A to point B, and then 3 minutes to board the Hyperloop and 3 minutes to disembark the Hyperloop. So that comes out to about 28 minutes plus the 26 minutes at the stations. So about 52 minutes to travel that 350-mile distance. And the safety of the Hyperloop, obviously, engineers suppose that it's going to be very safe with the controlled environment inside the tube. So it's not exposed to like hail or rain or snow like trains are, which is a risk for derailment. And then there's also minimal human error because it is driven autonomously. There's no turns, so you're just going straight. And there's also a backup lithium-ion battery pack on each pod to help with backup power in case of a power outage. Obviously, you're traveling at 760 miles per hour, so if you do hit something, you're pretty screwed. Most people expect the Hyperloop to be pretty comfortable with minimal vibrations, adequate legroom, cushioned seats, all the amenities that you would want. But obviously, it's going to be a pod since it's got to fit in the tube, so it is going to be an enclosed space that you probably can't walk around in. So now that we've talked about the Hyperloop's KPIs, we're going to compare them to similar modes of transportations. So first, we're going to talk about a past mode of transportation. Why would we look at that? It's because we can learn from the mistakes or the successes of transportation that have come in the past. So the first one we're going to look at is the Concorde. So the Concorde was basically a collaboration between the French and the British to design a plane that could fly really fast. And that's what it did. It flew at Mach 2.04. But it was very expensive to travel on the Concorde. There was not many amenities, and it wasn't very comfortable. Some described it to feel like a mini space shuttle. And then there was obviously a lot of issues with the sonic boom. For people living underneath these routes, they were complaining to the FAA. So eventually, the Concorde did not do overland travel. It only did overseas travel. So that and the high ticket prices, and there was also an accident killing 109 people, led to the downfall of the Concorde. So why is the Concorde a good comparison to the Hyperloop? Well, because both are a very cutting-edge technology when they came out. Obviously, the Hyperloop is super cool. Concorde was super cool in its time. And it was very fast. That was the selling point. Its reputation was based on its speed. So to compare the KPIs, the price of the Concorde was about $809 to travel 350 miles. Compared to the Hyperloop's $20 to travel 350 miles, it's pretty obvious who's the winner there. The travel time is about 105 minutes over 350 miles. Even though it flies about 2 times faster than the Hyperloop travels, there's the time that you got to go through security. You got to check in. You got to get your bags when you land. So that adds a lot of time. The Hyperloop, like we said before, is about 52 minutes to go that 350 miles. Safety features of the Concorde, obviously all air travel is regulated by the FAA, which kind of gives a baseline. But the cons are that obviously one of them did crash and kill 109 people, making people doubt the safety of the Concorde. On the Hyperloop side, it is a little bit slower, so if it does crash, you're probably still screwed, but a little bit less screwed than the one that's going 2 times the speed. And the Hyperloop, like we said before, is a closed loop, so it's not as exposed to the environment. And then, like we said before, the Concorde did not have a lot of amenities that the people who are used to paying that price point were used to having, but it did have onboard bathrooms, drinks, in-flight magazines, and stuff like that, that the Hyperloop may not have. So after analyzing the Concorde's KPIs and comparing them with the Hyperloop, we see that the Hyperloop wins in every category. All right, now we're going to look at the present mode of transportation, and this one is one that we have talked about earlier today with earlier presentations, and that is the Shanghai maglev train. So the Shanghai maglev train was built in 1999, I believe, and it cost about a little over $1 billion. So this was an experiment over 18.6 miles of track to kind of prove the feasibility of a longer route to connect it to Beijing. How is it doing? Not that well. The last statistic we got was from 2004 to 2006, and the company operating it lost about $1 billion. So that's obviously not good. So why are we comparing the maglev train to the Hyperloop? It's because the maglev train, the technology is pretty similar, but the Hyperloop is kind of like a maglev train in a tube, just on like the most basic level. And also, the maglev train is also like the Hyperloop in the way that you board the train and disembark the train and stuff like that. So the maglev train costs about $7.53 to go about 20 miles, and the Hyperloop costs about 2 times that to go a lot more. Obviously, I'm not a math person. But the travel time for the maglev train is about 1 hour and 18 minutes over 350 miles, and the Hyperloop is 52 minutes over 350 miles. So the Hyperloop is slightly faster. And then the Shanghai maglev train is pretty safe, but it is prone to power outages, while the Hyperloop is not because it has the backup battery pack. The Shanghai maglev train is pretty comfortable, as most people say. It rides very smooth, and it has a lot of legroom and has windows for you to look outside. And the Hyperloop does not have that, so that might be a slight disadvantage for people who want to see the scenery outside and stuff like that. So after comparing the Shanghai maglev train, its KPIs, and the Hyperloop, we see that the Hyperloop wins in the price category, the travel time category, the safety category, but they tie in the comfort category. Now, why are we going to look at future modes of transportation? Because we want to see what the competition for the Hyperloop is going to be. So we're going to look at Waymo, which is the Google self-driving car program. So Google has a self-driving car program that they've been working on for quite a while now. Their cars have driven about 1 million miles and only have had like 12 accidents, I believe. And that is all driven by the engineers, not by the computer. So right now, they're working on having the car recognize like light debris, stop signs and stuff like that to get it ready for commercial use. The effects on traffic and consumers is obviously if you're traveling by autonomous car, there's not going to be that idiot who like drives 20 miles an hour in the 45 miles per hour speed limit zone. So obviously there's going to be less traffic in the future. There we go. So why Waymo is a good comparison when it comes to KPIs? Because, like we mentioned before, it is obviously going to be it's probably going to be the mode of transportation for the future, and they also have the most data and experience when it comes to self-driving cars. So Waymo probably is going to cost about $1 per mile. That's what we have come to the conclusion with depreciation and maintenance and gas or electricity if you're driving an electric or an ICE engine car. And the Hyperloop is going to cost $20 for 350 miles. So that is obviously cheaper. The car is still going to be slower by about a lot. It'll take it 5 hours and 23 minutes to travel 350 miles, while the Hyperloop is going to take 52 minutes. Obviously, Waymo is going to be a lot safer than driving the car by yourself because human error is a large factor in most of the accidents that we have today. And another con is that there might be liability if you do own the car. And then we have come to the conclusion that in the future with self-driving cars, seats are not going to be facing forward. They're actually going to be kind of like on the Amtrak where you have 2 seats facing each other. So it allows for a more collaborative environment than, say, the Hyperloop where most of the seats are probably going to be facing forward. So after analyzing Waymo's KPIs and comparing them to the Hyperloop, we see that the Hyperloop has a better price, better travel time, better safety, but the Waymo does have a better comfort KPI. So after all this analysis, what have we come to the conclusion to? We believe that with the present parameters and circumstances, that the Hyperloop is feasible and it does meet the needs of consumers. So yes, but we do see self-driving cars as a supplement to the Hyperloop because self-driving cars will have to take you to the station because some people might live further away from a Hyperloop stop. However, there are some things that we did not look into, and there might be some merit to look into them in the future, which is other KPIs that we did not analyze, which may be a little bit more of minute details, and that there might be security factors that we have to look into, such as like going through security for the Hyperloop and stuff like that. And then there's also the upgradability of the Hyperloop, which is like right now Hyperloop is the cutting edge of technology. But by the time in the long term, when it does become commercially viable, is it still going to be the cutting edge of technology? Being like tracks, like trains, like whenever they were invented, those were the cutting edge of technology, but the difficulty to upgrade the old tracks and physics has made it hard to upgrade and make trains faster. So the Hyperloop may face similar issues. The just-in-time availability cost of the Hyperloop is that people, if your reputation is based on like speed, just like the Concorde had to have one Concorde in the hangar if the one that was flying people around had issues, because the people who are expecting to be there fast, they don't want any delays. So that might apply to the Hyperloop as well. The security process we kind of already talked about, like the boarding process may be slowed down if you do have to go through metal detectors and be pat down and stuff like that. The target consumer base after the initial hype of the Hyperloop. So we saw with the Shanghai maglev train that after the first year or so, after everybody was super hyped and just rode it just for the fun of it, that the occupancy of the maglev train started to decline. Right now it's about 50% occupancy, and most of those is tourists and stuff like that. So is the Hyperloop going to face similar issues? So what can you do with this information? So we're going back to the beginning. So now that we have the first step, we want to also get the second step, which is to analyze the average consumer's social economic level. So that means like what type of people are going to be riding the Hyperloop, and that will help us determine the demand level for the Hyperloop and bring us one step closer to answering the economic feasibility of the Hyperloop. And we invite you guys to build upon our research. And a big thank you to our sponsors at Michigan Hyperloop, VGW Hyperloop, and Transpod. And now I would like to invite my fellow team members, Casby and Steven, to do a quick Q&A.
So Nathan, I'm sorry, but we're a bit over time.
Okay.
So we don't have time for questions right now, but I hope that you will ask questions of Nathan and the whole UCSB team at the breaks.